Welcome back, fellow spy fans. Tod and Dave here for another episode of Spies Like Us podcast. This week we'll be talking about episode 1, season 1 of The Americans. We've both seen this, right? Have you seen the whole show, Todd?
I never did finish the final season, but I plan to. I'm re-excited about it, for sure.
Right. Yeah, I think it took me a couple episodes to really get into it, but I've always liked the premise from the get-go. I'm just as excited as you to get started with doing The Americans, because we're like when last week we did 3 Days of the Condor, doing our movie format again, but before that we did our Night Manager series. So we've been getting your emails about doing TV shows. We just haven't figured out what we wanted to do. And Todd and I had a discussion, and we felt that we didn't want shows to overstay their welcome. So we're going to try and do a season of a show in 3 episodes. So this one, we're just going to start with the first episode.
Yeah, well, let's talk about what is, like, how this is going to play out. Both for people that have seen The Americans before and people who haven't. For people who have seen it before, like, booyah. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to talk about season 1. We're going to tackle it, the first episode, a middle episode, that'll be episode 7, and the final episode, episode 13, each over the next 3 weeks. And if you haven't seen The Americans before, this episode really might serve as, sometimes, I like listening to movie podcasts where I have seen the movie. Sometimes if I haven't seen the movie, I'll just listen to the podcast just long enough to say, like, to make a decision on whether or not I want to drop in there. So if you're in that camp and you haven't seen this extremely excellent show, this episode is going to serve as giving you a reason to make a decision of whether or not you should watch it. And spoiler alert, you fucking should, because it's awesome.
Right. Yeah, it's really good. The acting, and Joe Weisberg, the creator of the show, is an ex-CIA agent, and then I think became a high school teacher, and then wrote a TV show.
He is, although I noticed, kind of like Ian Fleming. Like, Ian Fleming didn't actually have a very long career in intelligence before he dropped out to write. This guy was only CIA for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And I also kind of noticed that he, like, I don't know what CIA school is called, but whatever it was, like, he graduated or, like, actually, got his badge and became CIA right after the end of the Cold War, which coincidentally is where this series is going to eventually end, right?
Yeah, I think it ends right after the deal. I don't think the wall comes down, but it's pretty obvious that Russia and America start looking to heal their relationship, and the Cold War is kind of at the very tail end of its life.
Right.
Some have argued it's never ended, but from what we understand the Cold War to be, right?
And he was inspired by the story that came out, I think it was 97, 98. Like, we found like 12 of these illegals, as we call them,
Right.
like deep Russian deep moles in the US, and that inspired him to want to make a show about it. But then as he started thinking about it and developing it, he decided that it would be more interesting to set it during the Cold War than in the 90s.
Right. And that's the main premise of the show. I'm glad you touched on that, because it's a really good segue. The show, if you haven't seen it, is about Philip and Elizabeth Jennings, who are KGB agents that were basically set up by the KGB to pose as a married couple. They're actually legally married, and they had 2 kids, but the idea is they're kind of like these sleeper cell agents that are gathering information from the U.S. and sending it back to the motherland. But the big the big kicker is, meanwhile, next door, starting off in the first episode, is a FBI counterintelligence agent moves in as a neighbor. This actually turns out to be a coincidence, but it's a great setup for, tension and thriller and stuff like that. But that's the basic premise. But I think the first episode was a whole lot of setup, and Todd and I had a discussion about this, and there's some things that we kind of want to brush over really quick because they're going to be much bigger issues later, and then I think we'll finish off with like kind of the main, I guess, conflict of the episode. One of the things I thought was really cool was setting up just that tension immediately to have like we get a little bit of introduction to our like heroes or our protagonists, if we're gonna call them. Like we got a little bit of setup where there's a situation, they kidnapped this guy and one of their comrades gets stabbed. But what really sets the tension for like what the ongoing story is going to be is that their neighbor is a counterintelligence agent. And I thought it was kind of cool that you have two really qualified groups living right across the street from each other. Like you find out the neighbor Stan was like undercover with white supremacists for like years and like basically helped bring them down. So he knows how to think like undercover or like a mole or like, these illegals that they're trying to catch. And on the other hand, you see Philip when he's interacting with Stan, he's always asking reasonable questions. Like, oh, what do you do? Or there was a time where he was up taking his son to hockey practice, and he sees Stan, and he's like, oh, we have a 7:30 ice time. What are you doing up? And then the counterintelligence agency actually asks Stan his insight of being, undercover. So there's a lot of really cool things that you have these two capable people that are in like the world of espionage, kind of like right on each other's doorstep, so to speak.
Stan Beeman, played by Noah Emmerich, is really the third, like he's not a side character. He's the third main character of this show, I would say.
Right.
I think he gets, not necessarily in this episode, but if I recall, like over the episodes, like he's going to get kind of equal time with the Jennings, which is something that I like. And I like the fact that, at least for me personally, I'm rooting for all of them, even though they're on opposite sides. I don't see him as an enemy so much as just, a guy doing his job, and they're doing their jobs, and it just so happens their jobs are, to oppose each other and conceal things from each other. But that whole setup, I do like. I was really dubious, and I kind of remain so, about the idea of him moving in and becoming their next door neighbor, which is a big ass coincidence to swallow.
Yeah.
But
and
it was one of my number one big concerns when I was hearing about this show. It just sounded silly. And I think it does sound silly because it is silly. But in the end, I didn't mind. They pull enough goodness out of that bad premise that I think it's worth it. Just like the kind of things we were talking about, like the conversations that they have.
Yeah, I think that, like, if you can, suspend judgment, as they say, like, I guess in film, like, for that one thing and just let it go, it really sets up a lot of nice things. And you're right. It is so hyper coincidental. And like, even like, I wanted to mark this as like a bad tradecraft. At the end of the episode, you see Stan sneaking into the garage because he's been trained to not trust people. And so he breaks into the Jennings' garage to check the hood of the car for like this kidnapped agent to see if it was them or not. And it was, I thought that was a bad move on his part, because if they actually are agents, they're probably going to be privy to people sneaking in, But I think it created a lot of good tension as far as storytelling goes, where they're like right on each other's doorstep. And then we have this cool shot with Philip just sitting there in the shadows with his gun, watching Stan check the trunk. So Yeah, but you're right. A lot of the starting setup with this is kind of extravagantly coincidental, but if you can just swallow it or just let it go for a couple minutes, I think you'll anybody who hasn't seen this will enjoy uh, that setup and its, I guess, aftermath.
Yeah, they're all three very very good characters, and any excuse to have them interacting with each other is actually a good thing once you see the kind of chemistry that they all have on screen when they're together.
Just real quick, just touch on um, is Philip and Elizabeth's relationship. This is going to be a huge theme going on. They're both spies. They both know they're spies. They have to put up this front as being like the all American family, and they're kind of like uh, both very capable agents. Like you see with Philip pretending to be counterintelligence, meeting with Martha, who's like a secretary of FBI counterintelligence. So he's getting like FBI movements. And then you see Elizabeth like sleeping with like a politician to get information about, KGB defectors. And she's like sleeping with them and giving like him hot sex and stuff. And this does put a lot of strain on their relationship. They're leading a fake life with their kids and their family business. They have like a travel agency, and it's it's interesting, like watching as story wise. I'm not talking tradecraft wise. Just watching a married couple in this situation and their marriage developing. And Elizabeth is very clear, like everything for the motherland, and then you have like Philip, where he's like, family first type of thing. They're both loyal to the motherland, but Philip's more like family comes first. And I don't know. I wanted to kind of maybe just touch on this super quick because this is going to be a big issue like later on. And I was wondering if you had any quick thoughts on what you thought about the dynamic between Philip and Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem I have here is that I could talk about it for an hour
Yeah.
of how much I enjoy the nuances of their relationship. So I'm going to try to save some of it for later episodes, but essentially what's great about this is I think it's a male female relationship that you've never seen before on screen.
Right.
They're not they're not in a romantic relationship. They're partners, like you got the whole cops thing, like, I'd do anything for my partner. And, you can
Right.
see they're simpatico. They've worked together for so long. They gel together so well when they're in the field, even though, and, if they have some criticism or some second thoughts, they're going to save those for after the op, when it's safe to
Yeah.
bring them up.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but also, and their marriage, their marriage is a front and it was arranged, but there's like, I mean, they procreated, they had 2 kids.
Right.
There's sex involved. I'm, I was a little confused about, I mean, we're going to see like a little development about the confusion about like what their boundaries are with,
Hmm.
intimacy
Right.
with each other, and how sometimes those get crossed. But in general, like on a normal month to month basis, if there wasn't like story stuff going on, I could definitely see this as a like these guys being like a couple that has like sex on a schedule. It's like Monday, Mondays and Thursdays.
Right.
Um,
And then once they had their 2 kid cap, that's it. Right. That's hilarious.
I just love the fact that they're not necessarily in love with each other, but they're 100% loyal to each other. It's a fantastic spin on a male female relationship that only gets better throughout the show, and I think is just one of the shining stars of the writing.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Um, one of the things I did want to point out, though, because it does relate to what the big conflict of this episode is. Um, it- there is like at the end there is a moment where she starts falling for him, and um, well, I'm gonna let me explain this real quick. So at some point, Philip and Elizabeth abduct Timochev, who's a Soviet defector, and he's been killing. I think he's like a hitman. He's been killing agents for the U.S. government, like Russian agents or something. Um, But uh, when they catch him, he stabs one of their comrades who ends up dying later. And they're supposed to drop him off at a boat to get taken back to Russia. They miss the boat, literally. Um, and they basically have to take this guy prisoner.
So sorry. I thought they missed the boat because uh, Philip insisted on dropping him off on the at the hospital.
Right. Yeah. He stopped for like a quick second, and the boat like I'm not sure how long it was. The boat looked pretty far out, but he made it sound like, oh, they have to be punctual. But yeah, the reason why they missed the boat was because their comrade who got stabbed, he was worried about his life, and Philip was worried about the comrade dying, so dropped him off at a hospital and told them to check in as a John Doe. But yeah, that's why they missed the boat, literally. I have to say that because yeah. But anyway, so they're stuck with this prisoner, and they have him in his trunk, and they take him back to the house. And the main conflict of the episode is what to do with this guy, because this brings a lot of heat on them. And Elizabeth is like, adamantly saying we should kill him and get rid of him. The situation changed. We're allowed to, make our decisions when things change. And Philip's like, no, that's probably the worst thing to do. We got eyes on us and stuff like that. And it kind of creates a big tension between them. But one of the big conflicts that I'm kind of segueing in from their marriage, Philip starts to see the advantages of maybe defecting to protect the family, because they have this guy, the heat's on them, they're doing everything they can to keep it under wraps, and his thought is like, well, if we defect we could get paid and be on the run, and our kids will grow up and everything will be fine and we'll just live a happy life. She's like, no, do the mission, the motherland, blah 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 blah. And that's the kind of back and forth
To
we
be
get
clear,
between them.
he's not flat out proposing it.
Right.
I think he's just suggesting that whenever they're making any kind of very difficult decisions, they should consider that as one of their options. Keep it on the table, which she's not
exactly.
down. She's generally not down with. I was surprised. I mean, I was really. I mean, I remember the series very fondly. I was really surprised at how much setup they packed into this episode. There are so many things, like the complication of the son and daughter, the Stan Beeman moving in next door, the idea that Philip might be kind of saying, it's not really that bad around here.
Yeah, right.
Kind of stuff. There's a lot of things I felt like if I had been questioned about it before rewatching the first episode, I would have said had been dribbled in across the first 4 or 5 episodes. But no, it's all here. You get a great setup. And again, this is directly to anyone who hasn't seen the show. One episode, you're going to find out everything you need to know. In my opinion, you said you were a little iffy on it when you first watched it. In my opinion, this episode is it packs a lot in. If you're on the fence of whether or not you want to watch the show, just watch the first episode. You'll be able to make your decision.
Absolutely. We are definitely taking a broad stroke talking about this episode. There's so much we could go into. It would take us probably a few hours to just really dig into it. But we think a lot of this is going to be discussed over the next few episodes, which I think is why we might have thought it was spread out over the first few episodes. But you're right. It's really jam packed. It's really well written and really well set up. But the main conflict is what to do about this guy. And before we go into what they decide to do, I kind of want to, Todd, I think we should discuss, is it a good idea to kill him or is it a bad idea to kill him? Whose side are you on as far as tradecraft decision making goes with this? Because
I'm on Team Russell on this one, sorry, Carrie Russell. I should say I'll use character names. I'm on Team Elizabeth with this decision because there are fucking kids in the house. I really kind of, my balls are climbing up into their cavity, like just thinking about the exposure that they're looking at here with this guy in the trunk. And I don't know. I don't. He's a pro too. It's not like he just kidnapped some fucking accountant.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
this is even bound and gagged in your trunk. This is a dangerous man. You have kids in the house. It's exposure. I say, dump them off a dock somewhere. If they didn't have kids, I might be more on Team Philip.
Right. Absolutely. Um,
How about you?
I kind of agree
Oh,
with you too.
are you just gonna completely agree with me on that?
Yeah, I don't really have very many disagreements other than I'm gonna say I see Philip's standpoint. Without the big twist we find out later on, um, Philip is trying to look at all the options because once you kill the guy, that's it, right? They're gonna have to suffer consequences from the center and talk to their handlers and what about this? And like, hey, we could get him in. If we kill the guy, we're going to have to clean it up. It could also get us in a lot of trouble. Keeping him here for now till we get more information. I understand, where he's coming from, but I agree with you. Mainly, and for the same reason too. I think specifically because of the kids, there's no.
Well, also, what are they doing about like content contacting their KGB handlers and getting instructions, or was there some story reason that there's some interference there? They can't quite get a clear message out or back in.
I didn't see anything. It seems like this kind of went on pretty quickly or over like a few days. And I agree with you. You would think they could contact somebody or there was like a KGB safe house somewhere in the US that they could have used that wasn't their garage.
Yeah, that they
Um,
didn't necessarily need to put him on the boat, but could put him somewhere
right?
supportive.
Yeah. Other than that, I think I'm on Team Elizabeth as well. Like, this is a danger to our family and our kids, and um, but as it turns out, one of the reasons why she was so adamant about it wasn't so much that she wanted him killed; she wanted him out of the house. And it turns out that when she was training, he was a captain in the KGB and actually raped her.
Hmm.
Um, and so this is one of the reasons why she was so like super adamant at getting him out of the house. And really, the only, I guess, realistic way we're told in the show is to off him. Philip doesn't know this yet. And what happens is when Philip finally decides that he's going to go take him to stand across the street, Elizabeth stops them and starts beating the guy up. And Philip starts to figure out, oh, this guy raped my wife. And, like I said earlier, Philip is all about family first. Elizabeth is all about the mission. And when he finds out, and I think when he was kind of bringing up the idea of defecting and just putting it on the table, it was making her concerned that she might have to turn him in. But when Philip actually kills the guy, finding out that he had raped his wife, that let her know that, yeah, he really does care about our family and about me. He's not just some guy that was stuck in the situation. He really does care. And you get this little, cute romantic moment where they like, make love or whatever after they dispose of a dead body together.
I forget. I guess it was right after the fight with that guy. As far as romantic goes, them sitting down and doing each other's makeup to cover up each other's bruises from the fight.
Oh yeah,
That's fucking that got me right there. That's a low key, like, just hyper romantic scene that I liked a lot.
yeah, that was really sweet. Yeah, no, I forgot
I
about
could have
that.
done
That
with
was really
I
cute.
could have done with that and maybe kept her distance a little bit
Right,
uh,
right, right,
more for now. But
right.
even after that, they have that spontaneous intimate moment, which again, like, I don't think is usual for them. I think they
No,
are sex on a
yeah,
schedule kind of couple. Um, there's a later scene where he just kind of, I don't know, maybe kind of forgets himself and just kind of like nuzzles the back of her neck, and she, she recoils. She's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. We're pros."
Oh, it was when they first were married. They first came to the U.S. and they're in like Virginia,
Oh,
and
was
they're
that in a
like,
flashback? Oh, okay.
yeah, it
That
was the
makes more
first time.
that makes more sense then.
Right, and they were enjoying the air conditioning together. So it was kind of like a nice moment where they're in a hotel by themselves, and she recoils back and says, "I'm not ready yet," you know. And you can already see that there's like a distance between them, you know. Yeah, it's. I agree with you. I think the makeup scene was more intimate than the actual intimate scene, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was cute. I liked both of them.
Caring for one another.
Right.
um keeping each other safe, like, yeah, I
Yeah.
love it, I love it.
Like let me lick your wounds while you lick mine type of
It
thing, or
is,
the
yeah, licking wounds, that's exactly
yeah,
what it was. Fuck, great image.
yeah. But yeah, like I don't know, I like again, this episode had a lot of setup, and that was the main conflict. And but it's there's so much going on, and I'm really excited to see what happens. Especially with like their different costumes. I think they went through like two different costumes in the whole episode. Maybe
Oh sure,
three.
and
Philip, I think,
we
might have done
open
three.
with her in a wig, which we don't know
Yeah.
yet.
Uh-huh.
But it's, if you like wigs, also, this show is for you. Trust me. And I thought it was just me, but then when I started listening to, like, I started getting into the show, I was like, man, I fucking love these wigs. And then I started listening to some critic reviews, and basically every one of them mentioned the wigs as being like one of the star attractions of the show. Even though we have talked about, or no, we haven't talked about, but we've learned about in some of our research, like, this whole thing where Philip is, and well, maybe we'll make it a segue into that part of it, because it's another part of the setup where Philip has an op where he is beginning the very beginnings of what is going to become a seduction of Martha.
Right.
Let's see. Who's going to be a character that we're going to be talking about a lot more after this. Right now, they just have a little scene that shows them together. But, the wig he's wearing really changes his appearance. These Elizabeth and Philip are just so good at very subtly changing their appearance in a way that makes them look like an entirely different person.
Right.
Which is just fabulous.
I,
But what we've learned, from, at least from like disguise experts YouTube videos, is that you can't really like pull that off over a long period of time. Eventually someone's going to notice it's a wig,
yeah.
especially if you're actually having like an intimate relationship with them. But yeah,
Right.
over to Martha, which again is one of those things like, wow, we're setting that up this soon. He's got this op where, let's see, and who is Martha? She's
She's the secretary of the FBI the guy that's Stan's superior. She's
exactly, she's
she's his secretary.
Stan's boss's secretary. And Stan's boss, by the way, is played by John Boy,
Uh-huh.
who, from the Waltons, who hasn't been on screen in like fucking 40 years. But does fine here. But that thing, I don't know, maybe we save it for later, but I'll just put a pin in it real quick. Like, he's coming in as what's, you tell me, and then maybe I want to quibble about it. What's he doing here? What's he doing talking to Martha?
He's making it. I think he's pretending to be CIA counterintelligence. But the idea is that he's watching the Watchmen. He's like running counterintelligence on counterintelligence is the story he's giving her. He even gives her some spiel of like anything you say can be used in a court of law to make it official while he's still kind of flirty with her. But the idea is he's like meeting her regularly to get as much info as he can about the people in her office and like movements, and he's like really fishing for info, but like not directly like, hey, I need you to tell me all this stuff that you have on KGB. He's getting like indirect information that can actually lead to like a lot of information for him, like I don't know. She said that were talking about some sort of defector, I think is when their conversation,
Mhm.
while he's talking
Right.
about these other guys, like, oh, what do you think about this guy? Do you think you could trust him? And, she starts talking about other stuff, and that info, as kind of indirect the info it is, it's like a huge piece of information for them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's doing a good job in the moment of making this approach in this persona and gathering this type of information. I don't see how it could possibly, in his mind, like be sustainable as a long
Hmm.
play because I don't know if I'm Martha, and I mean, I feel bad. I feel bad for Martha, and you're gonna feel worse for Martha the more the show goes on.
Right.
Um, but she's not super smart, and we just gotta lay that out on the table. But even as a not super smart person, at some point, like, what does she think that like everyone in the office is having this informal debriefing or check-in kind of situation? Is it normal procedure for it to happen like what at her apartment?
Yeah,
um
that was the thing that weirded me out, and why it didn't raise any red flags. I don't know if maybe at that time period people wouldn't have thought of that, but I would like to think that that would have raised some red flags. That why are we meeting in my apartment? You know, um, but
right, maybe not in the moment, but a
right.
couple days later,
Hmm.
or I don't know, mentioning to your like I feel like the risk of her mentioning something to a coworker or her boss, just a coworker like, "Hey Sally, how how did your debriefing go?" And Sally's like, "What debriefing?"
Yeah, right. Well, he did
uh
say that he can't bring it up. I think he said something like that. I think there was a where he's like, "Oh, I need you to keep this under wraps. This is very important because we're watching the people who are watching for Russian spies and blah blah blah." Um,
yeah,
I
I'll
don't
just
know why
flag it
she.
as a bit dodgy, but again,
Yeah.
e- everything that I might consider a little dodgy in this show, like for instance, like again, like Stan Beeman just happening to move across the street or next door to them. It's going to a good. It's going. It's for a good reason, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Maybe some
Right.
people that are want to be more hypercritical than even we are, and that's the one thing we always get on this show is like, wow, you guys are you guys don't leave any stones unturned, do you?
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but that's supposed to be the value proposition of the show. Um, but it goes to a good place, and again it's setting up something that like, wow, why did you guys the boldness of cramming in everything they set up in this first episode. I keep coming back to this. Like, really could have been spread out over the first one, two, or three episodes. But maybe this was actually, I don't know if they still do the pilot episode season, but or system.
uh,
But this episode 100% functions as a pilot. Like if you're showing it to executives and you're saying, we made this one, do you want 12 more, yes or no?
right.
This
Right.
gives the executive everything he needs to know to make that decision. um Another thing that's set up here, I'll just flag it real quick, it's plus spy points. I love their cover of their job. They are travel agents.
Right. Which
What a
explains why they have to travel so much.
It's such a good cover. It's one of the
Yeah.
best I could possibly think of. You get calls from clients in the middle of the night. Hey, it's that guy from Hong Kong that's coming in. I gotta go do the thing. Like Craig's job where it's like he's like
Right.
on call constantly. This is like that times 10. You know, it's
Uh-huh.
global. It's
Right.
24 hours. Um, they have a small agency. I assume the people that work for them. I mean, I think they only have like what, like three people working in their office with them.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely could just be like low level KGB people that also assist them. It's also like a reason that if you needed to get on a plane and go anywhere without raising questions, it's just
Hmm.
perfect.
Yeah, so it does leave a lot of space for cover, which I think
It's
is
kind of
cool.
like in the old sitcoms. I don't know if you ever noticed this, but like in the old sitcoms, like advertising agency was always the job, because it just provided so much fodder for episodes of like you could always say like, yeah, we have a client coming in, we have to keep this all hush hush. I swear, I think like Darren from Bewitched is in advertising. um I'm struggling to think of other examples, but I think at one point I sat down and thought about it, and I think everyone in a 60s sitcom worked for an advertising agency.
That's pretty funny. I'm sure it's true.
Yeah. Let's see. Anything else that got set up here? Well, oh, you just mentioned Paige.
Mhm.
And that's going to become important over the series. She's like in a lot of places where you look up the cast list for the Americans.
Mhm.
Paige, that's their daughter. And they have a daughter and a son. Paige is older than the son and is, I would argue, a much more important character. She's played by Holly Taylor. In a lot of places where you look up the cast list for the Americans, you're going to find her third build after Matthew Rhys and Kerry Russell. Um, she is just getting around to what, 14, 15? Would you say 16?
Yeah.
I don't know. She's just reaching that age where she's gonna start maybe starting to rebel a little bit and maybe start also like asking questions kind of thing. I'm a little concerned that in this kind of like long-term sleeper cell agent plan, I mean, I like the idea of having kids as cover if you want to take it that far, but I also kind of think that and you know, maybe this is the first time the Russians had tried, or early in their attempts to do this kind of shit. But if I was doing the super long term planning from the beginning, I would say like, okay, we're gonna go until your first kid is 16, and then we're gonna have to like pull the plug or something, or you're gonna have to pre-plan to send that kid off to boarding school, get
Mhm.
them out of the picture. I
Right.
think would be good tradecraft. They're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to have fun with Paige. And I think, yeah, we set up Martha. We set up their cover, their relationship. They've got the nosy FBI neighbor Stan, who's also going to have his own like story arc going on, like parallel in later episodes.
Again, this was a lot of setup, and we just wanted to kind of brush through some things that are going to be major issues or points to talk about later once we finish season one off. But next week we'll be doing episode seven.
Episode 7.
Yeah, episode seven is season one. So if you want to kind of catch up with us, um, or if you want to just go ahead and finish the season to kind of follow along with us,
Yeah,
but we'll be
yeah, audience members, you do you, but we definitely have paced this in such a way that and starting with episode 7 and with the final episode 13, there will be spoilers. So you know, you do you, make your own choices if you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, but 2 weeks should be plenty of time to tuck this into your belly
yeah.
if you feel like it. Our next scheduled episode after we finish The Americans
Uh-huh.
is set for the day after. I think it's the day after or the day before No Time to Die comes out. So
okay. Well, no, we have to do that.
Once we finish this transmission, I got some thoughts. We're gonna meet together and figure that out. But yeah, absolutely. Right after, as soon as the series is done, the next week after that will be like some kind of Bond week, some kind of Daniel Craig, something. You'll at least be getting a brush pass from us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, maybe we got to do. Okay, well, all right, well, we'll get back, audience. We'll get back to you on what movie we're doing after the Americans. But join us next week for episode 7. And if this is your first time listening, you can add us to any podcast app you're using. Just search Spies Like Us podcast, or shoot us an email at spieslikeus.net, or jump on Facebook or Twitter. Our Twitter handle is spies_like_us, and I believe our Facebook address is facebook.com/spieslikeUspodcast. But just give us a search, throw us a shout out, let us know how we're doing with the new format. And if you hate us, you love us, whatever, we're just happy to hear from everybody.
Tell a friend.
Tell a friend. Yeah,
that's
tell everybody to
that's
listen
the number
to
one
Spies
best
Like
thing
Us
you
podcast.
can do. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, well, we'll see you all next week.
The preceding transmission sampled the song Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net.